Same industry. Same 3 months. One company's tractor division fell 14%. The other grew 20%. Two public earnings reports filed the same week. Two completely different stories about who is actually winning the American tractor market right now. Start with Deere's own numbers, because the honest version of this story starts with their report, not a competitor's press release. Second quarter fiscal 2026. Deere's Production and Precision Agriculture Division. The large tractors, the combines, the machines that actually plant and harvest American row crops, posted net sales of $4.5 billion. A year earlier, that same division did $5.2 billion. Operating profit in that division did not dip. It dropped 39%. Then Deere's own investor relations director said something on the earnings call that nobody in Moline wanted, said out loud. Large ag demand across the US and Canada is expected to fall 15 to 20% for the full year. Not an analyst's guess, not a bear case projection from Wall Street, Deere's own guidance, from their own people, on their own call. Now walk across the industry to AGCO, the parent company of Fendt, same quarter. AGCO told investors North American sales grew roughly 20%, driven specifically by high horsepower tractors, the exact category where Deere makes its money. AGCO's own leadership called it market share gains in high horsepower tractors and hay tools, not modest growth, gains. In the one segment Deere has owned for decades, two earnings reports, same week. One company losing ground in its core product, the other gaining it in the exact same category. And before anyone says this is just tariffs, look at where the tariff money actually went. Deere booked a $272 million recovery in the quarter tied to a tariff refund under federal trade law. That refund is part of what propped the top-line number up. Strip that one-time item out. The large ag division looks even worse than the headline number suggests. AGCO, meanwhile, is absorbing somewhere between $105 and $110 million in tariff costs for the year, and still posted North American share gains anyway. Same trade environment, same tariffs. Only one of these companies is growing through it. Before we keep going, if this is giving you the real picture behind the earnings reports, hit subscribe right now. No manufacturer money, no dealer relationships, just the numbers that matter. Back to it. Here is the part that should worry every dealer standing on a Deere lot right now. This is not a one-quarter blip. AGCO credits a program called Farmer Core, a service model the company expanded specifically to grow on-farm repair and support capacity. According to AGCO's own reporting, Farmer Core expanded service capacity by 65% in North America. 65%. In a period when Deere was closing plants in Iowa. Think about what that actually means for a farmer standing in a field. It is not just which tractor is parked in the shed. It is which company shows up when that tractor breaks down in the middle of planting season. A machine that never breaks down does not exist. What actually decides brand loyalty over a 10-year ownership cycle is who answers the phone at 6 a.m. during planting, and who is still driving 2 counties over instead of 2 states over when the part finally ships. Now, why is this actually happening? Because it is not luck. And it is not just tariffs. This is not the first down cycle Deere has weathered. But every prior one played out with Deere as the only serious option once demand came back. That is the piece actually breaking this time. AGCO built something specific, and it starts with the machine itself. Fendt Vario transmission. No gears to shift, no shift points to hunt for. The operator sets a target ground speed, and the tractor holds it, running the engine at whatever RPM burns the least fuel for that load. Under partial load, which is most of what a row crop farmer actually does most days. That system runs 200 to 400 RPM lower than a comparable John Deere 9 series at the same ground speed. Lower RPM at the same speed. Less diesel burned per acre. On a 5,000-acre operation that is real money by the end of a planting season, not a marketing bullet point. Operators who have run both machines describe switching to a Fendt, the way a long-haul trucker describes switching from a manual transmission to a modern automated one. You stop managing the machine. You start running the field. But the transmission was never the whole story. The dealer network is. Between 2018 and 2019, AGCO doubled its North American Fendt dealerships. By the end of 2025, Fendt had reached roughly 80% dealer coverage across the Americas, up from 40% just 4 years earlier. Over 200 dealer locations across 29 states and 9 Canadian provinces. 5 years ago, a serious row crop farmer in central Iowa who wanted a Fendt had to make phone calls. Today he makes a drive, now the third piece. Because this is the part Deere brought entirely on itself. For years, Deere controlled diagnostic software so tightly that a farmer with a broken sensor could not legally fix it himself. He had to wait for an authorized dealer, sometimes for days. During the exact week his crop could not wait, that fight ended in federal court this year. In July 2026, the FTC and 5 state attorneys general forced Deere into a 10-year settlement, requiring the company to open its repair tools to farmers and independent shops. 3 months before that, Deere paid $99 million to settle a separate class action over the same practice. $99 million. To settle a lawsuit about a farmer's right to fix his own tractor. AGCO never had to be forced into that fight. The company has publicly supported farmers' right to repair their own equipment for years. That position cost AGCO nothing. It cost Deere 2 lawsuits and a decade of federal oversight. And that legal problem is not staying contained to one lawsuit. Right to repair laws are already on the books in California, Colorado, Minnesota, New York, Oregon, and Washington as of January 2026. Each one requiring manufacturers to hand over parts, tools, and diagnostic software to independent repair shops on fair terms. 6 states. And counting. Every year this drags on, the old model where locking the software was just how the industry worked gets harder for Deere to defend anywhere in the country. So when a farmer is deciding between a green tractor and a Fendt right now, he is not just comparing horsepower and price. He is comparing a company that fought him in court for control of his own repair software against a company that never made him fight in the first place. That is not a spec sheet comparison. That is a relationship comparison. And relationships built on lawsuits do not survive the next purchase cycle the way relationships built on 6 a.m. phone calls do. Now the honest picture. Because Deere is not going bankrupt tomorrow, and anyone telling you that is selling you a thumbnail, not a fact. Deere's total revenue in the second quarter actually rose 5% to $13.4 billion and beat what Wall Street expected. But that growth came almost entirely from construction and forestry, up 29%, and small ag and turf, up 16%, the large ag division, the tractors, the actual John Deere identity. The machines this whole company was built on. That piece fell 14%. Deere is being propped up by bulldozers and lawn equipment while its signature product bleeds share to a Bavarian competitor. That is not collapse. That is something slower and honestly more dangerous for a 100-year-old brand. That is irrelevance creeping into the one category that built the company's name. Look at how Wall Street actually reacted. Because investors do not get emotional about brand loyalty. They get emotional about earnings quality. Deere beat the headline revenue number. The stock still dropped 5.2% the same day, closing around $531 a share. That is the market telling you it saw straight through the construction and turf numbers to the division that actually matters, and did not like what it found there. A beat on paper with a sell-off in real time is one of the clearest signals a market can send. The layoffs back that up. Across 2024 alone, Deere cut over 2,000 jobs across its Iowa and Illinois plants. More than 1,000 of them in Waterloo, the largest Deere manufacturing site in the world. 26 separate rounds of cuts in a single state in a single year. That is not seasonal. That is a company shrinking its production footprint at the exact moment a competitor is expanding its dealer footprint. Now picture the farmer actually living through this, because the spreadsheets only tell half the story. A row crop operator in central Iowa does not wake up loyal to a spreadsheet. For most of his life, buying green was not really a choice. It was the default, because there was no serious alternative at scale. Switching brands meant retraining, new parts inventory, a whole new relationship with a dealer he did not know. That was a real cost. And it kept farmers buying green even through years of rising prices and repair headaches. Talk to anyone who has actually made the switch. You hear the same thing in different words every time. It was rarely one dramatic breaking point. It was a season where the fuel bill came in noticeably lower, A harvest where the dealer 3 counties over could get a part there the same afternoon instead of the same week. A repair his own hired hand could finally clear from the cab instead of waiting on a service truck. None of those alone would flip a farmer's brand loyalty overnight. Stacked together over 2 or 3 seasons, they add up to a decision that looks obvious in hindsight and felt gradual while it was happening. But that condition, the one where there was no serious alternative, does not exist anymore. There is a machine at the county fair that burns less fuel under partial load. There is a dealer showing up in a new county every few months instead of every few years. There is a company that never made him go to court to fix his own sensor. Every barrier that used to keep him buying green is gone, one at a time, over the last 5 years. So is John Deere finished? That is the honest question. Here is the honest answer. No. The company still runs the largest dealer network in American agriculture. Still owns brand recognition no competitor can buy overnight. Still posted 5% revenue growth this quarter, even with large ag falling apart underneath it. Deere is not disappearing, but the specific thing that made John Deere untouchable for 40 years, the assumption that there simply was not a serious alternative for a large-scale row crop operation, that assumption is gone. It did not end in a single dramatic quarter. It ended the way these things always end. A transmission that burns less fuel. A dealer network that showed up faster. A federal courtroom that forced open the one system Deere used to control completely. 3 separate cracks. Arriving at the same time. In the same year. On the same balance sheet. Deere's own leadership keeps repeating one phrase on every call this year. 2026 will mark the bottom of the cycle. Maybe it will. Cycles do turn. Deere has survived plenty of them before. But every previous down cycle in this company's history had one thing this one does not. In back then, when the cycle turned and farmers started buying again, there was nowhere else serious to take that money. Now there is. A transmission that burns less fuel under load. A dealer network at 80% coverage and rising. A repair philosophy the farmer controls instead of one a courtroom had to force open. When the next upcycle arrives, Deere is not just fighting to survive the down years anymore. It is fighting to make sure the farmers coming back into the market come back to green. And not to a Fendt sitting one lot over. Whether Deere can plug that leak before the next earnings call is the only question that actually matters now. Right now, the company has not answered it. Drop a comment below. Are you one of the farmers who switched? Or are you still running green and planning to stay? That answer from operators in this comment section tells us more about where this market is actually heading than any earnings call ever will. Thanks for watching Farm Gear Pro. If you found this breakdown valuable, share it with a fellow farmer and comment below your thoughts on this topic. See you in the next one.